This is Diana Sullivan in Austin, Texas. Today, partly to help meet the needs of one of my readers who's doing Enchanted Edgings on a Punchcard machine, I'm going to show how to do Enchanted Edgings on a Brother 890. Now, you might be wondering what Enchanted Edgings are. Well, they're scalloped lace designs, and here are some Punchcard examples of these scalloped lace edgings. And I think they're really very pretty. Here's one that's curved. Here's one that's just sort of a mesh, but they've all got this pretty up and down edge. Here's one. They're all named after fairy tales because I thought they were automagic and that the machine does all the work. Now, this one right here is the one I'm going to demonstrate today, but I'll thumb through just a few more. The book's available at www.dianaknits.com. Made a lot of edgings because there are a lot of lace patterns available for your Brother machines, and so you need a lot of choices so that you can make things to trim your projects on a Brother machine. These patterns are no good on a studio machine. This is a Brother only book. Sorry, the engineering is too different to do it on a studio machine. Now the idea is you make this narrow edging and you apply it to your project. I've got an example here of how effective this can be applied to a project. Here's a big circular shawl that I just finished this weekend. Let me unroll it. And I've got an edging running all the way around the edge of this shawl. I'm going to demonstrate Eye of Newt, but they're all done about the same way. Here's the Eye of Newt page for the electronic machine. This chart is for electronic machines only. It doesn't work on a Punchcard machine. You have to punch a special card. The chart for Eye of Newt is here in the back of the book on page 32. All the Punchcard charts are in the back of the book. This one is a 24 stitch wide edging. Here's my Eye of Newt card. You can either punch from the diagram, or the book and DVD come with DAC discs, and DAC can print a template for you. Anyway, you need to not only punch the chart, but add 2 extra rows of leader holes on the top and bottom of the plastic punch card. I'm putting the punch card in to this machine. I just make sure it's straight and right side up. I'm putting the card snaps on these 2 snap holes on the side, and then putting them on the 2 snap holes on the front part of the card. I want to make a continuous loop out of this card so that I can knit just as long as I please, and it'll keep repeating and repeating the design. Once my card is in and the snaps are in, I have to turn to the proper row for row 1. I have a mark on my card, and I also bring this lever over here to the round dot. That's the place where it does not advance the card. I have to do something to each of my carriages. I have to turn off the in needle function on my main carriage. You see this pink cam right here? I can use the tip of a transfer tool, put it in that little black screw hole, turn it 90 degrees, and that turns that off. I need to do that on both sides of my main carriage. The lace carriage also needs to have the same treatment. It tends to suppress the end needles, and I don't want it to do that. If there's a punch, I want it to pick the needle out. So I just turn these a quarter turn, and that fixes the lace carriage. Now I write myself a note to put them back. These things are the way they are for a reason, and for ordinary projects, I want them the other way. On both ends of my machine, I've installed the extension rails. On the right end of my machine, my main carriage rests on the extension rail. On the left end of my machine, the lace carriage rests on the extension rail. The extension rails are essential for this project. You can damage your machine by having both carriages on the bed at the same time. Eye of Newt is 24 stitches wide, So I'm cast on, and I've knitted about 3 inches just as a starter piece. If this was a real project, I would start with waste yarn. I'm from number 12 left to number 12 right. So that knitting is done, and I've hung a couple of weights on here. I've chosen a yarn that does lace very well. Lace works well with acrylic or wool yarn in about a 212 or thinner weight. Don't go too thin, too thick, and you want something that stretches and springs back. Now we're going to follow the step-by-step instructions on page 31 of the book, which is the page that's just about how to use the punch cards. Following step 6 on page 31 of the book, which is how to use the punch cards to make these edgings. I have brought my carriage over to the right edge of the machine, and I'm turning the change knob 1 click over to the KC. With it in KC, it's going to select needles. Now I knit a row to the left, selecting needles, and as a matter of fact, it selects every needle. Over at the card reader, I changed the setting from the dot to the triangle so it will advance when we have a change of direction. Before I knit to the right, I put in both part buttons. With the part buttons in, the machine only knits the selected needles. Then I knit from left to right. I go all the way to the right edge and park that carriage on the extension rail, and I leave those part buttons in. Now I slide the lace carriage onto the bed. The card does not advance. Why? Because the lace carriage is going the same direction as the main carriage was going. And I slide on across. I go back and forth with the lace carriage for this pattern 4 times. But what you're going to do is keep going until it selects almost every needle. That means time for the main carriage. If you kept going with the lace carriage, this wouldn't be good for it. But this is the setting we need to do the knitting of a partial row with the main carriage. Now I take my lace carriage, move it all the way off the bed onto its extension rail on the left. Now I bring in the main carriage and I knit 1, 2 rows. Lace carriage, just go back and forth until it selects almost every needle. It works out to be 4 rows every time with Eye of Newt, but they're not all that way. Some are different. 2 with the main carriage. Now 4 with the lace carriage. 2 with the main carriage. Now here's something that is really cool about this. It's decreasing. It's making a shape along the left-hand edge. Let me get in close so you can see that. See how it has decreased by 3 needles so far? There are 3 empty needles here, but the machine knows not to knit them because of the way that I use the part buttons. Now I'm going to keep knitting. It's pretty simple. Time for the lace carriage. 1, 2, 3, 4. Main carriage. 1, 2. Every single time I use a carriage, I roll it off onto the extension rails. Main carriage. I'll just keep going off camera and show you how this turns out. Before I know it, I've knitted a complete repeat. It's gotten small and then it's gotten wide again. And my card is back around to the beginning. But I just keep going. You can make these as long as you want. You can apply them to the project as you go using sew as you go techniques.